My feelings on drum editing are whatever ends up serving the song. Because there's certain times where, fixing a drum part really can kill it. And it's kind of heartbreaking to me to see people just, as a standard matter of course, let's, align these drums up to a grid. I actually had one client we're mixing a record, and he's like, listen to that. Going up to the bridge, the kick drum is kind of rushing ahead of the beat. Look, you can see it on the grid. And I'm like, I know, that's why we hired him. Listen how amazing it is. Listen how it pushes up the energy into that transition. Every once in a while there is like a kind of rock or pop thing where right on the grid absolutely serves the music best. Even, a great drummer, being made a little more mechanical just kind of serves that vision. So it's all about whatever is going to be best for the actual tune. My own preference is that kind of work bores me. And it also ties into my own taste and aesthetics. So I certainly don't do it as a matter of course. I would much rather, see if there's some bars that are really flubbed, like did we do another take where I can bring that over and replace it. And I have no moral objection to sliding a kick drum around to get it to work. But it all depends on the song. It all depends on, whether things are done to a click or not. And that's another huge mistake a lot of people make, is insisting on everything being cut to a click. I'll hear producers and engineers talk about, oh, this band came in, and their drummer was so terrible he couldn't play to a click. And it's like, what planet did you just land from where not being able to play to a click makes somebody a bad drummer? It's like, you remember you saw them play last week and you said, this band is so awesome, I can't wait to get them in the studio. And now that they're in this completely foreign context, and the drummer who's used to being the driving force of that band is now surrendered that job to this thing going tick, 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 tick. And a lot of people will try and just force a band into it. And that actually just kind of screws up a lot of bands, because there's a lot of music that isn't supposed to be to a click. Again, poor John Bonham, kids on the internet would rip him to shreds. Oh, I had this horrible drummer in, with this band Led Zeppelin. He kept speeding up on the last chorus. What a terrible drummer. And a lot of that stuff is just natural. A lot of people make the mistake of going, oh, it needs to be on the grid. And the reality is, if you're forcing something onto the grid, it's really to make the engineer's job easier. And if you're making a bunch of decisions to make the engineer's job easier rather than getting inspired performances, you're in the wrong gig. Or I don't want to, please let me know who you are so I don't buy your records, because they're not going to have that magic that we need, or, the reason for making records in the first place. Because a lot of times, even when I'm working with great virtuoso drummers who you've seen on covers of magazines and stuff, a lot of times we'll go work on a second song let's try this with a click. Let's try it without. And maybe half the album will be to a click and the other half won't, just because that serves the song. And the whole concept of just, making the whole, music serve some ticking sound on a track is really a mistake. And again, there are other songs that you put them on a click and they just get so much better. But a lot of people make the mistake of not really paying attention and, trying to see what actually does serve the music and serve the song. I've done this with drummers with walls of platinum records and, legendary guys. It's just a different feel. And about different songs, there's something about being to a click that alters music, sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way. And I actually even have to fight from time to time, because a lot of great session drummers, put on the click, that's one less thing for them to worry about. They don't have to worry about tempo. They just have to worry about groove in their part. And I've actually even, not fist fights, but, arguments like, no, come on, man, let's get this off the click track, because we want a little of that natural ebb and flow. But yeah, it's absolutely a case on even just really proficient session drummers where some music just seems to work much better off the grid. About 90% of my work is producing, mixing, and mastering records, but I do have this other business called Recording Boot Camp, what I try and do with the boot camps is really just focus in on the craft of making records. And a lot of the traditional stuff. So there's a lot of places where you can go and, do Pro Tools training or train to be an assistant somewhere. But I wanted to create something that was all about people want to make records better. How can I help them do it? And so I've spent a lot of time really distilling it down to a lot of the core principles and fundamentals, because the reality is that with recording, 80% of it is just really understanding a really small group of core concepts and fundamentals. And if you really understand those, you can do almost anything else. Again, figuring out, how to do automation tricks in Logic or something like that, that's, there's some cool things you can do. But the core of making amazing, fantastic records is really manipulating these core concepts, really understanding phase relationships, understanding dynamics, understanding how what you do before the microphone affects mastering, and trying to understand things in a broad context. And so that's kind of what I do with the program. It's mostly, my main thing is a big 6-day program, but also do some smaller, like some evening and one-day things with myself and a couple other teachers. But that's it. It's kind of a place that's not necessarily a career training kind of thing, but if you want to make better records, I can give you the tools to do it. And it focuses a lot on the more traditional techniques, because the thing is, the things that made Dark Side of the Moon a great record, aren't obsolete because Pro Tools is about to release Pro Tools 11. It's all the same thing. It's, some different tools, a few different variables available, but that's the thing, coming from a tradition and really understanding that, because today so many people learn by reading magazines and what guys post on the internet and a lot of other things, and they didn't have the chance for the apprentice thing, or to come up with other engineers, where a lot of these things that are actually to somebody who came up in the older time, oh yeah, that's simple and obvious, are sort of sometimes mind-blowing to people because they never really understood it. And the reality is most people never understand how simple recording can be and how easy it actually should be to make really good sounding records, because most people just overly complicate things. And if they get off on that, that's totally fine. But a lot of people make the process of recording way more difficult than it needs to be, and usually at the expense of them actually getting to the end goal that they're trying to reach. I also have this thing I do called Ronan's Recording Show. I started, I guess it's been 3 years or something now, but I've got about 40 videos up. And it's just kind of a combination of gear reviews, recording tips, interviews with various people. And, the whole thing is really just kind of a fun hobby for me. So, whenever I get a chance to try and share some interesting ideas, review some cool toys, because I love getting to check gear out, I put those together, and, and luckily other people seem to like it too, because I'm, getting, thousands and thousands of people every week watching the shows that I do. So it's I'm glad I'm not the only one that seems to enjoy it.